Hey everyone, so here is our first video that you guys are going to have for homework, and it's a continuation of the notes that you were taking today about polynomial characteristics. So you guys can just take out your notebook and write these facts down as we discover a little bit more about these polynomials. So you can call this other polynomial characteristics. I'm missing I. There we go. So it's going to be like a quick 5-minute video with just some quick bulleted facts. So first one, domain. Now we've already learned about two specific types of polynomials this year, the linear functions and the quadratic functions. So you can think about what the domain of those types of functions were, and they did not have any restrictions. So all polynomial functions won't have a restriction unless you're working with inverses or a real-world scenario where you have to give it a restriction. They're not one of our reasons to have a domain restriction. The range, however, will differ depending on the degree of the polynomial. So if you have an odd degree polynomial, like a linear function, those do not have any restrictions. They will continue up and down. However, even degree polynomials, like a quadratic, if you visualize that in your head, it did not continue up and down. It only continues in one direction. Depending on your leading coefficient, that could help you figure out where the graph is going. So there are two scenarios. It's either going to go from the lowest y value, we're going to call it the y min, up to infinity. Or if the graph continues downward, it'll be negative infinity until the y max, the highest maximum value. And those minimum maximums do have specific names. We're not going to refer to them as a vertex in this section. You'll hear that vocab by the end of the notes today. The next thing we're going to talk about is the degree. Thinking about today's lesson, you should be able to recall that the degree is the highest exponent in that polynomial function. It's going to tell you some other characteristics aside from the name of it. So the first one, the degree can tell you how many turning points it has, meaning how many times the graph will be going from decreasing to increasing or increasing to decreasing. So there can be up to one less than the degree turns, which I will refer to as n minus 1. You take the degree and you subtract 1, and that can be how many times the function could turn. Could be less than that, though. So, for example, if we have a degree of 3, like a cubic, it could turn up to 2 times, so up to 2 turns. If you have a quartic, a degree of 4, it could turn up to 3 times or less. Some quartics will end up looking like quadratics, which only have 1 turn. Now these turns have other vocabulary that are associated with them. So another way of saying the turning points, I could refer to them as the local max or the local min. Could also be referred to as the relative max or min. Not like a family relative, a math relative. And the last vocabulary word that could be associated with those turning points is extrema. So if I'm referring to the extrema of the graph, that also means look at those high or low points. If I use the phrase absolute min or max, those are referring to the absolute highest or lowest points, and those would be used when you're trying to figure out the range of an even degree polynomial function. The next thing that the degree is going to tell you is the number of zeros. So the zeros is the same as the degree. So if our degree is 4, then you will have 4 zeros. Now those zeros could be real, they could be imaginary, they could be repeated zeros, but it's the total number that that polynomial function will have. This is also due to something called the fundamental theorem of algebra. which basically says any polynomial with a degree of 1 or higher will have at least one root. So linear functions, 1 root. Quadratic functions, 2 roots, etc. Remember, roots is just another vocabulary term for the zeros. And the last thing we're not going to write down right now, you guys are going to fill this in tomorrow after we do the inquiry lesson. So there's one other fact that's going to be filled in tomorrow, so you can leave a couple lines blank, and then we'll go ahead and address that after you guys do some discovery. And that is it for your notes today. I'll see you guys tomorrow in class.